Hi, I'm Lisa Leiter. In Chicago Business Today, Northern Trust. Northern Trust is the only big global bank left headquartered in Chicago. It was one of just two of the nation's top 20 banks that did not slash its dividend during the financial crisis. The crisis also calmed longtime concerns among locals that Northern Trust might be bought by a bigger rival like Goldman Sachs. Now that takeover talk is off the table, the question is where Northern Trust goes from here. Earlier, I sat down with Steve Daniels, who wrote a story on that subject in this week's print edition of Crain's. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Sure.
Northern Trust made it through the financial crisis better than its peers. Why? What was the major reason why they were able to skate through it?
Northern was a much more conservative institution than almost any other bank of its size. Particularly its investments that it made were all in very short-term, highly liquid types of investments. They had very few losses in their investment portfolio, and most banks couldn't say that.
So now that we're emerging from the crisis, what do investors and analysts expect from Northern Trust?
Well, I think everybody's looking at to them to make some deals, to build on their position. They're stronger than they were going into the crisis, and they've emerged with an even stronger reputation than they had going in. So how do you take advantage of that?
So you talked to Rick Waddell. What did he say? What kinds of companies will he be going after?
Well, they'll be looking at buying, smaller wealth management outfits in markets that they're not in, or banks. Washington, D.C. is clearly their highest priority. It's a market in North America that they're not in, they really, really want to be in. Other East Coast cities too, they've set up shop, but they're pretty small. New York and Boston both would be target areas. Internationally, almost all of Northern's growth in the last 5 years has come outside of the U.S. and 35% of their 12,000 or so employees are actually located outside the U.S. They're emerging as a global company.
Can they compete on the East Coast against those big Wall Street banks?
One of the issues that they have is name recognition, brand recognition. And they've been more aggressive in advertising and marketing themselves. But still, this is not a name that is known in every nook and cranny of the United States. It's known very well in Chicago, and it's been here for 120 years. But elsewhere, not so much. So, and deals can help you there as well.
So what did Waddell say his other priorities are going forward?
At the same time that he's talked about doing deals, he's also very cautious about it and says, we don't have to do anything. We're growing organically. We'd like to do something if it makes sense. This is a very conservative group. But other priorities for them would be they need earnings to improve. They're held down right now by the very low interest rates, but they're no different than every other bank in their area in that regard.
So what's their biggest challenge then, trying to balance between wanting to grow more or to kind of staying the course that is doing just fine?
What's their appetite for risk is in essence the question for them. And they don't want to mess anything up. In the next 12 months, we'll see one way or the other if what they say is their priority is indeed their priority.
Any names out there that we might know for potential takeovers?
Most of the names are not names that people would know. A real wild card would be U.S. Trust. It's a very large wealth management outfit that has changed hands now twice in the last 10 years. And there is a rumor and nothing more that it might be available. If so, Northern would be an obvious suitor. And that would be a very big, splashy deal for Northern by its standards. But all of that is strictly rumor and speculation at this point.
All right, it remains to be seen. Well, Steve, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Northern Trust stock has held up better than its peers so far this year. It's down 2.7% in 2010, while the S&P index of asset managers and custody banks has dropped more than 7%. Well, that's this edition of Chicago Business Today. For more on this story, be sure to check out this week's print edition of Crain's or chicagobusiness.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.